a perpetrator or when a perpetrator is left scot-free roaming around our village, you can imagine the risk we are putting ourselves. Because hi, so you caught me reading my copy of the Sexual Offences Act, and it's very interesting, and it's going to form our basis for our conversation today. So maybe before we begin, many a times we often hear that a sexual case has happened. Maybe we're in the village or in our homes, maybe it's our neighbor, and we often wonder, whose business or who's supposed to report such kind of a case? Should I go to the chief, then he can go to the police, or who needs to complain about this? So according to the Sexual Offences Act, well, anybody can launch a complaint against sexual violence. So I think this is a very good platform for all of us, because anybody can complain. The Republic, anybody who is acting on behalf of a child or someone with mental disability, or the victim themselves can lodge a complaint. So I think it gives us some sort of freedom, and it kind of tells us that it's time we stop being afraid. There are witness protection programs, so if you can get a hold of that, it will be good for you, because again, it tells you that you can report. Let's not keep quiet. It's time we speak against gender-based violence and violence in general, especially sexual violence to children and in our communities. We need to speak about it, and we need to complain about it, because when a perpetrator is left scot-free roaming around our village, you can imagine the risk we are putting ourselves. Because if a person can rape someone then today and nothing is done about it, then what happens tomorrow? Okay, and this goes for those of us who prefer to handle their business using the chini law courts. That is not healthy, because sometimes those chini law courts do nothing. They're just paid something small, and then the case disappears, and the person who the alleged perpetrator in this case is left scot-free, and it puts all of us at risk and in danger. So today in the Sexual Offences Act, I'm going to be looking at the offense we all term as rape. So that is in section 3, and it says a person commits the offense termed rape if he or she intentionally and unlawfully commits an act which causes penetration with his or her genital organs. Intentionally and unlawfully causes penetration with his or her genital organs. So according to the Sexual Offences Act, the genital organs include the whole or part of the male or female genital organs, and that includes the anus. Penetration in this case would mean partial or complete insertion of the genital organs of a person to another person's genital organs. So remember, it is partial or complete. So there are those guys who say ilingia tu kidogo. Remember, the Sexual Offences Act clearly says the genital organs is part or whole. So even if it's a tip, those are the terms guys use in the streets. Kalingia tu kidogo. So remember, penetration includes partial insertion or complete insertion of one's genital organ to another person's genital organ. Remember, it is intentional and unlawful. Okay, the person does not consent to the penetration. So if a person does not consent to this intentional and unlawful penetration of genital organ, then it sums up the word rape. Okay, the consent is obtained by force or by means of threats or intimidation of any kind. So when there is penetration which is intentional and unlawful, and the person obtains consent from their victim through intimidation and threats, then that sums up the word, that person commits an offense called rape. Penalty for rape is 10 years to life imprisonment. So it's a hefty penalty for those committing the rape, for those committing rape. So remember that consent means that a person had agreed by choice, actually was not forced, and the person had the freedom to make that choice, and that means that they were not intimidated or threatened to commit to that act, and the person had the capacity to make that choice. So a 17-year-old or a 16 or a 13 cannot consent to having sex. Remember, like I always say, ignorance is no defense. So that's it on Section 3 of the Sexual Offences Act. The offense rape. So today we've only talked about rape. So subscribe and come back for more. We shall be looking at the Sexual Offences Act as we describe various forms of sexual offenses and their penalty. So it's a conversation you do not want to miss. So subscribe.